Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. If you're studying for the UPSC exams,
You know how important it is to understand the big issues facing India?
and today we're tackling one that pops up all over the mains and prelims.
India's groundwater situation.
We're talking about way more than just geography and the environment here.
It touches on economics, public health, even social justice.
So to really nail those exam questions,
You need to know this topic inside and out.
and thankfully we've got an incredible source to help us break it all down.
The Central Groundwater Board.
The CDWB for short.
They're like the guardians of India's groundwater.
Monitoring, managing, and regulating this absolutely essential resource.
And their latest assessment. It's a bit of a wake-up call.
They're finding contamination all over.
We're talking nitrate fluoride,
Arsenic.
iron, and even uranium.
Exceeding those safe limits in more and more places.
Oh.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty,
Could you give us a little overview of...
how the CGWB actually gathers all this information?
Because it seems like a pretty massive undertaking.
Right. It's a huge country.
They've got a network of over 26,000 observation wells across India.
26,000.
Yep, keeping tabs on the quality and quantity of the groundwater.
Wow, that's impressive.
And get this, they've gone digital.
Digital. How so?
Thousands of these wells are equipped with piezometers,
Piezometers.
special sensors that send real-time data.
Real time.
Yep, straight to their central system,
That's incredible.
so they can track groundwater levels in different regions.
See how they change with rainfall.
Or irrigation patterns even predict shortages,
That is a game changer.
especially for proactive water management.
And for us UPSC folks,
Understanding how this tech is being used, that's important.
it could totally come up in the exam.
Right. Technology and governance, that's a hot topic these days.
Oh, back to that contamination issue.
You mentioned nitrate as a big worry.
Why is nitrate contamination so alarming?
And what makes it such a big deal?
Especially for us aspiring policymakers.
Well, the latest CGWB data shows a huge jump in the number of districts with excessive nitrate levels.
How big of a jump are we talking?
From 359 in 2017 to 440 in 2023.
So that's like
More than half of India's districts now.
struggling with nitrate contamination.
And the health implications are no joke.
So for those of us prepping for the UPSC,
Understanding the link between environmental issues and public health is key.
what happens if you have too much nitrate in your water?
High levels can lead to methemoglobinemia,
Methemoglobinemia.
especially in infants.
Now that sounds serious.
It disrupts the blood's ability to carry oxygen effectively.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
And it's not just human health we need to worry about.
Right. There's the environmental side of things, too.
Excess nitrate in water bodies fuels the growth of algae.
Algal blooms.
They deplete oxygen in the water, suffocating fish and disrupting ecosystems.
So it's harmful on multiple levels.
Exactly.
And where's all this nitrate coming from?
Primarily agricultural runoff
Runoff.
from fertilizers used to grow crops.
Ah, I see.
Many of them are rich in nitrogen compounds,
Like,
ammonium nitrate and urea.
and when it rains,
These compounds seep into the groundwater,
leading to...
nitrate contamination,
So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
trying to feed a growing population.
But the methods we're using are polluting our water.
Exactly.
Now I'm guessing this problem is worse in some areas than others.
The CGWB data shows Rajasthan, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu have the highest proportion of contaminated blocks.
So almost half of their groundwater samples had too much nitrate.
Yeah, it's a serious issue there.
What about other regions?
Well, while those states have struggled for a while,
We're seeing an alarming trend in central and southern India.
states like Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh,
All showing rising nitrate levels.
it's a red flag for sure.
And this is just one part of the story.
Right.
What about those other contaminants?
Like fluoride and uranium.
Can you shed some light on those?
And which parts of India are hit the hardest?
Because this geographical analysis is super important for the UPSC.
About 9% of groundwater samples had too much fluoride.
9%.
And the states where it's most common
Are Rajasthan, Haryana, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana
and high fluoride levels.
can lead to skeletal fluorosis.
Now, remind me what that is again.
It causes bone deformities. Joint pain makes even simple movements difficult.
So if you're relying on that groundwater for drinking,
It can be devastating.
that's really tough.
Now, uranium is a naturally occurring radioactive element.
Yeah, that one sounds a bit scary.
And while trace amounts are normal,
Elevated concentrations.
can be incredibly harmful.
So what did the CGWB find?
Several areas had levels way above the safe limit of 30 parts per billion.
Way above. Like how much?
Some even went over 100 parts per billion.
Oh, wow.
Rajasthan and Punjab are the worst affected.
Yeah.
There are concerns in Gujarat, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka too.
It seems like it's quite widespread.
And overexploitation of groundwater is a big factor.
Overexploitation.
When we pump out water faster than it's replenished,
You're right.
it creates a void.
Which can draw in
Contaminants like uranium.
So the more we overuse it, the more vulnerable it becomes.
Okay, before we look at India's overall groundwater situation.
Let's recap what we've learned about contamination.
Yeah, quick review would be helpful.
Nitrate contamination, mainly from agriculture.
Is a growing threat to health and the environment.
Fluoride can cause debilitating skeletal fluorosis.
And uranium is a radioactive element with its own set of risks.
It's clear that India's groundwater is under stress from contamination.
And we need to address it urgently.
Absolutely.
Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
The overall state of India's groundwater in 2024.
What's the CGWB saying about that?
Their report shows that India's current groundwater extraction rate is 60.4%.
60.4%.
We're pumping out over half of the available groundwater.
Is that sustainable?
It's pushing the limits, but 73% of blocks in India are still classified as safe.
Safe.
Meaning there's a balance between withdrawal and replenishment.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
But what about that other 27%?
Those areas are facing serious challenges.
Right.
Falling water tables, drying wells, increased vulnerability to contamination.
It's a chain reaction impacting agricultural livelihoods and even social stability.
Yeah, this needs urgent attention.
This is clearly a complex issue,
Absolutely.
and it touches on so many different aspects of governance.
Economics and public health.
So UPSC aspirants, this deep dive is your secret weapon.
To nail those tough exam questions.
And speaking of resources,
The CGWB website is a gold mine.
a gold mine of...
Data and information.
All right, before we wrap up part one of this deep dive.
Let's try a little thought experiment.
Okay, I like thought experiments.
Imagine you're a policymaker tasked with tackling India's groundwater crisis.
What would your top priorities be?
Think about the needs of farmers who depend on groundwater for irrigation, the health of communities that rely on it for drinking,
Right.
the long-term health of the environment,
There.
the economic impact of water scarcity.
There are no easy answers here,
That's what makes this such a crucial and fascinating topic.
especially for those of us who want to shape India's future.
Exactly.
So much to think about.
We'll be back with more insights in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks, and keep those brains buzzing.
We'll explore potential solutions.
And the complexities of sustainable groundwater management.
Welcome back to our deep dive on India's groundwater.
Before the break, we were talking about that challenge you posed.
If you were a policymaker, how would you tackle this crisis?
There has to be something we can do.
One promising approach is focusing on water-efficient irrigation techniques.
Like what kinds of things?
Think about traditional flood irrigation. It wastes a ton of water.
I can imagine.
But if we switch to methods like drip irrigation
Irrigation.
or sprinkler systems, we can really reduce the amount of water we're using.
Exactly. Less strain on the groundwater.
And less contaminated runoff too, right?
You got it.
Are there any government programs to help farmers adopt these methods?
There's the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana.
The PMKSY. It's designed to improve water use efficiency in agriculture
And how does it do that?
by providing financial assistance and technical support,
So farmers can make the switch to those more efficient systems.
like drip and sprinkler irrigation.
That's a great start. But just changing irrigation won't fix everything.
You're right.
What about the contamination that's already there?
Can we clean up groundwater once it's polluted?
That's what I'm wondering.
There are remediation techniques, but they can be expensive and complicated.
Like what?
One method is bioremediation.
Using tiny organisms to break down those contaminants.
Exactly, like nitrates.
And what's the other one called?
Phytoremediation.
That one uses plants, right?
Yep, to absorb and remove pollutants.
From the soil and water.
It's pretty cool, but implementing these solutions on a large scale,
That's the tricky part.
it's not just about the technology itself.
It's about...
Affordability, making it practical, integrating it with local conditions.
That makes sense.
We need investment expertise, and most importantly, community participation.
So it's a team effort.
For sure.
And what about regulations?
Can stricter regulations help prevent contamination?
I feel like they could play a big role.
Absolutely. We need stronger regulations to control industrial discharge.
And limit the use of...
fertilizers and pesticides.
which are major sources of contamination.
And we need to actually enforce those regulations.
Hold polluters accountable.
Right.
But regulations alone aren't enough, are they?
We need to change how people think about groundwater.
especially in rural areas where it's so vital
Public awareness campaigns are key,
to help people understand,
that groundwater is a shared resource.
and that we need to protect it,
Exactly. And those campaigns need to be tailored to local communities.
addressing their specific concerns.
That's how you get people involved.
So we've got efficient irrigation,
Remediation technology.
regulations, and public awareness.
Pulling it all together requires coordination.
If you're talking about collaboration between
Government agencies, scientists, farmers, industries, communities.
everyone working together towards a common goal.
Exactly. It's a collective responsibility.
Now, what about the role of research and innovation?
Are there any new technologies that could help us manage groundwater better?
I hope so.
There's some exciting research happening with nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology for groundwater.
Yep, for remediation,
And what about
artificial intelligence, and remote sensing,
track those groundwater levels?
and identify contamination hotspots.
These advancements sound really promising,
But we need to make sure they're accessible to everyone.
especially those who are most vulnerable.
Equity and inclusivity are essential.
So we've got a potential roadmap.
Water-efficient irrigation.
Remediation technologies, regulations, public awareness, collaboration, and innovation.
It's a complex challenge with a lot of moving parts.
And don't underestimate the power of individual actions.
Every drop we save, every responsible choice we make.
It all adds up.
Absolutely.
Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Let's do one more thought experiment.
hit me with it.
If you had to prioritize these conservation efforts,
Where would you focus your resources?
what are your top 3 and why? Keep in mind the challenges we've discussed.
And those regional variations in groundwater conditions
Thinking critically about these complexities,
will help you develop a nuanced understanding,
which is essential for crafting effective policy responses.
both in the exam and in the real world.
Exactly.
So much to consider.
We'll explore those policy priorities in the final part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into India's groundwater,
We've covered a lot of ground
from the extent of the contamination problem.
to potential solutions and innovations
And last time, we asked you to think like a policymaker.
to prioritize those groundwater conservation efforts.
So let's put on those policy hats and dive in.
If you were in charge, where would you focus your energy?
What would be your top priorities for tackling this crisis?
For me, it boils down to 3 key areas:
3 key areas.
data-driven decision-making, community empowerment,
Great.
incentivizing sustainable practices.
These 3 pillars create a really comprehensive approach.
I think so.
So data-driven decision-making sounds essential.
It really is.
But how can we use data more effectively to manage groundwater?
Imagine a real-time dashboard
A dashboard for groundwater.
showing groundwater levels, extraction rates, contamination hotspots.
For the whole country.
That's the idea.
That would be an incredible tool.
We could pinpoint areas at risk
Target interventions precisely where they're needed.
and even track the impact of our policies.
But collecting and analyzing all that data.
That's a challenge for sure.
But you think it's possible.
Absolutely. The technology is already there.
We talked about the CGWB's network of digital piezometers
We need to expand that network, integrate data from different sources,
and make it all accessible.
not just to policymakers, but to researchers and the public.
Transparency is key.
100%.
All right, so data is our foundation.
What's next?
Community empowerment.
Right. Why is it so crucial to get communities involved?
Because they're the ones most affected by groundwater quality and availability.
Exactly. They rely on it for everything.
Their livelihoods, their health, their daily lives.
And they often have traditional knowledge about local water systems.
That could be incredibly valuable.
It's about recognizing communities as custodians of groundwater.
So how do we empower them?
Education and awareness are crucial.
Help people understand the threats to groundwater.
And the steps they can take to conserve it.
And
We equip them with the tools and resources they need.
training on water-efficient irrigation, maybe?
Exactly. Supporting local water management plans, providing access to technologies.
Building capacity and giving them a voice.
That's the goal.
All right, that brings us to your third priority, incentivizing sustainable practices.
Right. What kind of incentives are we talking about?
Financial assistance for farmers who adopt those efficient irrigation methods.
Tax breaks for industries that invest in water recycling.
Rewards for communities that implement conservation programs.
Making sustainability the rewarding choice.
So we've got data-driven decisions, empowered communities, and incentivized sustainability.
It sounds good in theory.
But implementing this on a national scale,
It's going to be tough.
what are some of the biggest hurdles we might face?
Lack of coordination between government departments.
Ah, the classic silo problem.
We need a more integrated approach with clear responsibilities and communication.
So breaking down those barriers and working together.
Absolutely.
What other challenges do you see?
Funding is always a constraint for those big infrastructure projects.
Like wastewater treatment plants.
Rainwater harvesting systems.
We need to prioritize investment in groundwater conservation.
And make sure those funds are used effectively and transparently.
And then there's the issue of water pricing,
Groundwater is often heavily subsidized.
which encourages over-extraction.
We need to price water realistically while protecting vulnerable communities.
So it's a balancing act.
For sure.
And what about the social and political landscape?
Are there any potential roadblocks there?
Groundwater management can be politically sensitive.
Regulating water use, imposing restrictions on industries,
Strong leadership is essential to overcome those challenges.
and put the long-term interests of the people first.
This isn't just a technical or economic challenge.
It's a social and political one, too.
It requires a shift in mindsets and a commitment to sustainability.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget about research and innovation.
Right, we need to keep pushing the boundaries.
Developing new technologies and approaches
Smart sensors, predictive modeling, AI.
to optimize water use and predict contamination.
These advancements are critical for a water-secure future.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
We've explored the complexities of this challenge
From the alarming levels of contamination,
to those innovative solutions on the horizon.
we've examined the roles of technology communities, policy, and individual actions.
We hope you feel equipped to tackle any UPSC question on this.
And to contribute to solutions beyond the exam,
Remember, every drop counts.
every action we take, no matter how small.
Can contribute to a more sustainable future for India's groundwater.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Be sure to check out the show notes for additional resources
We'll be back soon with more fascinating topics.
to help you ace those UPSC exams.
Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, keep striving for a better future.
And if you found this deep dive helpful,
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insightful content.